Hi guys, my name is Sarah. I'm a sleepwalker. If you don't know much about sleepwalking, you will after hearing my story. Anyone can be a sleepwalker, but it's most common among children and teens. We found out that I was a sleepwalker when I was 8 years old. One night, I walked into my parents' room and woke up my mom by shaking her. Just as she was trying to figure out what was happening, I slapped her really hard. I left the room before my mom could calm down. When I was leaving, I was saying things like, "Give it to me, it's mine, it's mine." Obviously, my parents got up right away and followed me. At first, they checked my room. When they saw I wasn't there, they started looking around the house, but they couldn't find me, so they got a little worried. Guess where they finally found me? In the bathtub. The first few times they entered the bathroom, they didn't see me because I closed the shower curtain after laying down in the tub. When my dad finally pulled the curtain open, he saw me in the tub sleeping. Unfortunately, my mom spent that whole week with a black eye. I think she had told me she'd walked into a door. My mom only told me the true story last year, laughing about it. I was a little upset that I hurt her, but compared to everything else that happened to me because of sleepwalking, this incident is pretty innocent. Especially what happened this one night. I'm sure you'll agree with me when you hear about it. But first, I need to tell you a little more about sleepwalking. You know how in movies, sleepwalkers walk around like zombies with their arms raised in front of them? That's so not true. Sleepwalking happens in the deepest part of sleep, but somehow the brain allows the person to move around. Scientists haven't figured out how exactly this happens yet. There are people who eat while sleepwalking or even drive their cars for hours. I've been told that when I sleepwalk, my eyes look like a doll's. Even though my eyes are open, my expression is blank. In the darkness, my memory helps me walk around as if they were light. For example, I can easily find doors. One year, we rented a summer house. On our first night there, I sleepwalked. At home, the door in my room is to the left of my bed, but in the summer house, it was on the right. I didn't know the house well yet, so I went to the left. My parents woke up to the sound of scratching coming from my room and ran over there. I was scratching the wall trying to find the door, and my nails were making a loud noise. Doctors usually refer to sleepwalking as a behavioral disorder rather than an illness. They still don't know what causes it, but they're almost sure that it's genetic. So if you're a sleepwalker, it's highly likely that there's another sleepwalker in your family. For me, it's my aunt. One night, when my mom was still living with her parents, she got up to go to the bathroom and saw her sister in the living room. She was vacuuming the floor. My mom knew that her sister was a sleepwalker, but at first, she thought that she was just cleaning because she spilled something on the floor. But then she saw that the vacuum wasn't connected to a power outlet. Yet, in her sleep, my aunt seemed to think she was really vacuuming. Let me tell you another story about my aunt. One night, she thought her pillow was her baby daughter. She panicked, turning the pillow over and over. Her husband woke up and watched her for a while. He asked, "Honey, what are you doing?" She cried, "Where is her head? Help me. I can't find her head." Another thing I want to tell you about is waking up sleepwalkers. A lot of people think that if you wake up a sleepwalker, they'll go into a shock and die. Yes, people actually believe this. I don't know who made this up, but it's definitely an urban legend. As someone who has been researching sleepwalkers for a long time, I haven't heard of a single person dying because they were woken up. However, it is true that if you wake up a sleepwalker, they will get confused and might even become aggressive. That's why it's not recommended to do that. Instead, it's best to carefully lead them to their bed and help them slowly lay down. My parents know this, so they never wake me. But I did wake myself up once. Let me tell you about that real quick. My mom has been making yogurt at home for years. One night, I started sleepwalking and went straight to the kitchen. I took the pot with the yogurt from the counter and put it on the floor. Then I opened the lid and stepped inside. I have no idea why I did this. That's the only good thing about being a sleepwalker. Nobody judges you for what you do because you do it unconsciously. That night, after I was done with whatever I was doing with the yogurt, I decided to go back to bed. But since my feet were covered in yogurt, I slipped and fell. And that's when I woke up. When I opened my eyes in pain, I saw the pot with the yogurt right next to me. Thankfully, I didn't hit my head. My feet felt wet, so I touched them and realized I had yogurt up to my ankles. My shock lasted a good 15 to 20 seconds. But I'm still alive and well, as you can see, even though I woke up with a big shock. I think now you have a pretty good understanding of sleepwalking. Finally, I can tell you about the most dangerous and silliest and the funniest story that happened to me because of sleepwalking. Let me start by saying that all I have in my room right now are 2 beds. One for me and one for my mom. Because she now sleeps in my room, we had to remove everything else and added a special lock to the window. We also lock the door before I go to sleep, and my mom keeps the key. Why do you think my parents had to take such drastic measures? Why did they become so alarmed recently, even though I've been a sleepwalker for years? You'll understand when I tell you about what happened 2.5 months ago. I forgot to mention one thing. Sleepwalkers don't sleepwalk every night. There are some findings about what triggers sleepwalking, but it varies depending on the person. My reason for sleepwalking is usually stress. For example, if we move to a new apartment, or if my parents had a fight, or if I have an important exam the next day, I definitely sleepwalk. The story I'm about to tell you happened on a much more stressful day. My dad was unfairly fired from the company where he'd been working for 13 years. For the first time ever, I saw him crying. He was having trouble accepting what had happened. It made me really sad to see him that way. I couldn't sleep for a long time after I went to bed. I cried for hours before finally passing out. When I woke up, I was in a different house in bed with a paralyzed 80-year-old woman. I can't even begin to tell you how scared I was. When I opened my eyes, she was the first thing I saw. She was looking at me with her blue eyes wide open. She couldn't react because she wasn't able to speak or move, but I could tell she was as scared as I was. The next day, my dad and I put on our detective hats and figured out exactly what happened the night before. It turns out that I got into bed with the woman, Mrs. Roberts, in 3 steps. Step 1, fly through the window. We figured out that I got out of bed at around 4:30 a.m. My parents say that my door was closed in the morning. That means I didn't walk around at home. When I sleepwalk, I open doors and I never close them. So I must have gone straight for the window. Whatever I was dreaming of led me to open the window and step on the windowsill. And I just kind of let myself fly down from the 3rd floor. I fell onto the awning below and then flew onto the patio umbrella of a pizza place as if I were jumping on a trampoline. I must have woken up by then because I remember hitting the umbrella quite well. I tend to confuse dream and reality in this state, so I thought it was a dream. I think it was pretty natural for me to think so, since what was happening was quite extraordinary. Parts of these falls were caught by the security cameras of nearby stores, and the footage is just like a Hollywood movie. I'm laughing about it now, but my parents couldn't recover for days after watching me fall. Now, step 2, running like crazy. Apparently, there was a refugee staying at the pizza shop at night. He ran out as he heard the noise. And he saw me, a girl who had just done a soft landing thanks to the awning and the umbrella, and who was sleeping like a baby on the sidewalk. He checked my pulse to see if I was alive. At that moment, I opened my eyes. Before he could realize what was happening, I started running, and he started running after me. He was screaming, "I'm just trying to help you." He was probably worried about getting in trouble because he was in the country illegally. I ran for a while with him chasing me, but eventually he gave up because he was a little overweight, so he got tired. Can you believe that I kept on running while I was sleeping? Well, that's exactly what happened. Finally, step 3, entering the apartment through the window. There are no witnesses here. The people who live in the apartment that I walked into say that their cat Bella goes out at night during summer, coming in and out through the same window. The cat uses Mrs. Roberts' window, so it's always open, including at night. But that night, it wasn't just Bella who used it. I don't know how I managed, but I climbed in through the window and went straight to bed. Mrs. Roberts woke up but couldn't do anything because of her paralysis. As you can see, there's a good reason for my mom to sleep in my room and for the window locks. Thanks for listening. If you want to send your story, why don't you email it to the address in the info section?
Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma. I'm 14. If you're my age or younger, you'll probably think that what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable. For example, when your mom wakes you up in the morning, can you tell her, I played Roblox until 4 a.m. I'm really tired. I'm not going to school today. That's exactly what I told my mom yesterday, and she said, sleep tight, darling, and gave me a kiss on the cheek. I'll give you another example. If you told your father when you were 12 years old, I want to get a tattoo. Do you know any good tattoo artists? Would he tell you, there's a girl at my office who has really cool tattoos. I'll ask her for her artist's number. That's exactly what my dad told me. Next week, when I showed him the dragon tattoo I got on my arm, he said, it looks amazing. You should get one on your other arm, too. As I said at the beginning, you might not believe any of this, because as everyone knows, parents like to stick their noses into everything their kids are doing. They make a lot of rules, some of which make sense, and others that are useless, and expect the kids to follow them, no questions asked. The kids, of course, often have no choice but to follow them, because otherwise they get punished. This might sound really weird to you, but my parents have never set any rules for me. They never tell me what I can or cannot do. They don't question the things I do either. That's how it's always been at our house. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that this wasn't normal. I thought that's how it is for everyone. But eventually, after seeing how other kids and their parents interact with each other, I realized that this wild life with no rules was something unique to my family. My mom and dad have always treated me as if I were an adult. For example, when it was time for me to start school, they sat me down and said, Gemma, do you want to go to school? You can homeschool with private tutors if you want. It's up to you to decide what you want to do. I was very young then and didn't really know what school was. I just knew that almost all the other kids were going to school, and I thought it would be fun to play with them. I said I want to go to school just because I wanted to play. After that, my dad said, deal, but if you change your mind at some point, you can stop going. You don't even have to tell us that you don't want to go anymore. We'll figure it out when we see that you stopped. At first, I was only going to school so I could play with other kids, but eventually I started to like what I was learning, and I decided to keep on going. By the way, for those of you who are curious, my grades are not bad at all. But my parents have never asked me, do you have homework? Or what did you get on your so-and-so test? When I tell my mom I got a good grade, she's happy for me, but that's as far as it goes, and she never brings it up herself. Yes, I'm in school, but my parents don't put any pressure on me to get good grades. I think that actually helps me to do better in school. So why are my parents acting like this? Because they both had problems with the rules they had to follow when they were kids. When my mom was a girl, she had a notebook she carried with her all the time. When her parents made up a rule for her, she wrote it down. They made up so many rules that she couldn't keep track of them unless she wrote them down. My dad grew up in an orphanage. He also had a ton of rules he had to follow the whole time. By the time they both turned 18, they couldn't take it anymore and ended up leaving their homes and going traveling. They met in a mountain village in Peru and got married a week later. That day, they promised each other, in the future, when we have a child, we will never have any rules for her. She'll grow up to be the freest child in the world. Obviously, that child is me. I don't know if I'm the freest kid in the world, but I'm definitely the freest one among my friends. Some of my friends actually don't like the fact that there are no rules in our house. They say, this is too much. Sure, nobody likes to have too many rules, but we're still just kids. Our parents need to have at least some rules for us. I want you to help me figure out who's right. Let me give you a few more examples, and you can tell me if you think I have too much freedom. Let me know what you think in the comments after you finish watching. Just like with everything else, my parents don't set any rules when it comes to going online or playing games. During last summer vacation, I got addicted to Candy Crush. I played so much that by the time I finally got bored and quit, I was on level 5430. Those who've played it know that this game looks easy, but some levels are extremely hard. There were times when I didn't leave my room and played Candy Crush for 3 days straight. I would only get up when I really had to go to the bathroom. I was totally going too far. My parents were bringing me food, saying, "We missed you, love," and sitting with me for a while. I couldn't stop because I was obsessed with the game. Despite all this, my parents never said a word about it to me the whole time, because they are completely against forbidding me from doing whatever I want. Do you think there are any restrictions when it comes to food? Of course not. There is no set dinner time in our house. Whoever wants to eat will eat whatever and whenever they want. My dad loves to cook. Every time I open the fridge, there is some food that he's prepared, but I don't have to eat it if I don't want to. For example, the other day at breakfast, I told my mom, "I feel like having ice cream." She replied, "Check the fridge to see if we have any. If not, we can get it delivered." I don't know how that sounds to you, but some days I only have ice cream for breakfast. Last winter, I had chips for dinner every night for a month and a half. Of course, that wasn't healthy at all. But in the end, I was the one who decided to stop instead of my parents telling me to. I don't think there's anything wrong with living in a house with no food rules either. I think it's wonderful to eat only the things that you feel like eating. As I said earlier, my parents don't even forbid me from getting tattoos. I can get as many tattoos or piercings as I want, but most tattoo artists don't believe me. Every time they ask me to bring them a signed letter from my parents. For my 5th tattoo, I wanted to get a small butterfly on my neck. I went to a tattoo artist who I heard was really good. She had a daughter around my age. Even though I showed her my letter, she said it's not right for a kid your age to get tattoos and refused to give me one. She even asked for my mom's number and called her up right away. She argued with my mom for allowing me to get a tattoo. In the end, I couldn't wait any longer and sneaked out from the shop. As I was running out the door, the woman was screaming behind me. To tell you the truth, I can understand why other parents are mad at mine. They think that a kid raised with as much freedom as I had would be a bad example for other kids. They are right, because when my friends see how I live, they start questioning the rules their families impose on them and stop following them. This, of course, doesn't make the parents happy. When I was 9, I went to a friend's slumber party for the first time. We were playing a really fun board game and laughing like crazy. At some point, my friend's mom came in. "Girls, it's past 11. You'd better go to bed," she said. It was the first time I was seeing a mom tell her kid what to do. This was really weird for me because I wasn't used to it. But the weirdest part was that everyone suddenly stopped playing. When I saw that, I said, "But we were having so much fun. Let's keep playing. It's too early to go to bed yet." The girls stared at me in disbelief. They were shocked that I had the nerve to say something like that. My friend's mom frowned and said, "Gemma, in our house, when the grown-ups say something, the kids do what they are told." Naively, I asked her, "And what happens if they don't?" She said, "Of course, they get punished." Because there are no rules in our house, there are no punishments either. When my mom said they get punished, I didn't even know what she was talking about. Even though it's been years since this happened, I still can't wrap my head around the concept of punishment. One time, I made plans to go to the movies with a friend. When I called her, she said, "I can't make it, I'm grounded. I can't leave my room this weekend." I asked her why. She had asked her dad, "My allowance is too low, could you raise it a little bit?" For some reason, her dad got super angry and grounded her for the whole weekend. I think it makes no sense that parents see it as their right to punish their kids. Grown-ups think they are the boss of the house, and unfortunately, kids often accept that without any objections. Now you know my story. Would you like to grow up in a house where you are free to do anything? Or do you think having no rules is not a good thing? I'm really curious about what you think. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening to me. See you.